Did you know that United States is India's second largest trading partner? In 23-24, the bilateral trade between the two countries was a little under $120 billion. Did you know that the then ambassador, Robert Blackwell, in 2002 had called trade between India and the United States flat as a chapati? And did you know that the Indian students are the second biggest cohort in the United States and that they contribute little under $10 billion in fees and expenses every year to the US economy? Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host, Anil Padmanabhan. In a few weeks from now, the United States will elect a new president. Effectively, this makes the incumbent, Joe Biden, who opted out of the race, a lame duck president. This political handicap, however, did not deter President Biden from combining with his Indian counterpart, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to effect an unprecedented deepening of the bilateral relations between the two countries. This includes the transfer of technology to design and manufacture a critical class of semiconductors used in defense and telecom equipment. To unpack the import of these bilateral talks, I spoke to Rahul Sharma. He is the Managing Director of the US-India Business Council. I began by asking Rahul what he thought of the fact that the emerging bedrock of the bilateral relationship between India and the US is technology and business.
Looking back about a quarter of a century, the India-US relationship has definitely evolved into, it's a robust bipartisan commitment. It's not merely driven by political shifts. So if you go back to the earlier presidencies of George W. Bush, President Obama, and then, President Trump, and then President Biden. And you realize that both Democrats and the Republicans in the US, as well as successive Indian governments across party lines, have supported the partnership for over 25 years now. And the continuity in policy, I think reflects the belief that the India-US relationship is not confined to some short-term political shifts, but it is seen as a strategic necessity for both nations. And you're right, the cornerstone of the India-US partnership has increasingly become economics, especially in technology-driven sectors, as you said. The US views India as a rapidly growing market, while India sees the US as a crucial partner in its economic modernization and global trade aspirations. If you look at what's happening to bilateral trade, it's consistently grown. US is one of India's largest trading partners. And the focus in the last several years has expanded beyond the traditional sectors into high-tech industries, including defense, manufacturing, energy, and infrastructure. And technology actually has emerged as a cornerstone of the India-US relationship, with both countries prioritizing digital transformation, things like innovation and high-tech cooperation. So that's where it stands. So if you look at the recent visit of Prime Minister Modi to the United States, and you see what actually came out of it, was really what we just talked about. A lot of focus on critical and emerging technologies, further solidified collaboration in high-tech areas, supply chain resilience. You're looking at semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, critical minerals. So I think the two sides have worked together to diversify and secure supply chains, reducing reliance on any single country, especially China. So a lot of it is coming from that. So the understanding and appreciation of each other's strengths on the economic and business front.
So, Rahul, you're so right on the bipartisan consensus in both countries over the last 2.5 decades. It's amazing. But how does this background that you rightly pointed out, plus this new, cornerstone of the relationship, business and tech, mean for fostering future business investments by American companies in India?
So if you look at it, what's happened, Anil, and you've been also following a lot of it, and I've seen you writing about it too. I think there is a clear understanding that there is a need to stay engaged in the long term from a very strategic point of view. So, for example, if you go to Bangalore, for example, you realize, all the GCCs that are coming up and all the American companies which have had a base in Bangalore for several years. I mean, if you really look at it, a company like Texas Instrument came in sometime in the mid 80s, and it's there and it's grown just like everybody else. So I think there is a clear understanding that there is a lot that can be done together, and the strategic engagement is important. Just imagine the number of people US companies actually employ in India. And that's the kind of push to give the economy. I mean, yesterday, for example, I don't know if you saw it, Cisco had just sort of opened up a new facility in Shri Perambudur. And that's the kind of investment you're looking at. You have a company like Apple, which is, through its manufacturers, like Foxconn, investing huge amounts of money into it. But I think the reality is that the critical focus from an economic point of view remains on the supply chain issues. And that is where, if you see, the decision to establish a semiconductor fabrication plant in India, supported by the US Space Force, it marks a historic shift towards strengthening India's role in the global tech supply chain. And this move is also, expected to reduce reliance on China and promote self-reliance in critical technology sectors. It all plays very well into India's goal of, becoming a global manufacturing hub. It also complements US's desire to be resilient, to have trusted supply chains. So the focus on technology, supply chain resilience, and innovation-driven diplomacy, as we see it, they all ensure that the partnership will continue to flourish in the coming decades. But at the same time, just one more point I wanted to make. Let's see what the strengthening of India-US ties does. It actually provides a very stable, predictable environment for business investments. And US companies are seeing India as a reliable partner with shared interests in areas that they both want to work on. And that is where it's coming from. So if you look at the recent high-level dialogues, such as the US-India commercial dialogue, the strategic clean energy partnership, India-US defense acceleration ecosystems, and the ISET initiative, these are all structured to clear the pathways for US companies to invest in India, especially in the innovation-driven and technology sectors.
Rahul, you mentioned this, which to me is the biggest takeaway of this bilateral meet, is the Department of Defense blessing to guide the setting up of a fabrication semiconductor complex in India. This is something similar to the 2005 US-India civil nuclear deal. So how do you see this deal, and how do you see this acting like a confidence booster to investments into India?
No, I think it's a landmark move in the India-US partnership. It's huge, actually, on both sides if you look at it. And this is this kind of shows the trust that has built over a period of last so many years. I mean, we know, for example, semiconductors are central to the modern technological infrastructure. Everything from smartphones to defense systems, everything needs semiconductors. And this decision, it's a pivotal development if you really look at it in terms of not only business but also strategic point of view. So when you're looking at aim to diversify and strengthen semiconductor supply chains, reduce reliance on foreign sources, It's all coming out of, obviously, if you really look at it, the post-COVID era, where suddenly the world realized that you can't continue to rely only on one market or geography. But what it does is it facilitates technology sharing from US firms to Indian counterparts, and it at the same time boosts local expertise and innovation. So India benefits from being positioned as a key player in the global semiconductor supply chain, and that boosts its strategic significance in the Indo-Pacific region, as well as in terms of the US, whatever that the US markets are looking for. So it could possibly lay the groundwork for a deeper collaboration in advanced technology fields like communications, AI, quantum computing, and other defense technology. So I think it's a big move, and it is something that that has to be looked at very seriously as a big step in building longer term relationships between the two countries.
I want to take you back to something you mentioned in passing in your opening remarks. That is, this bilateral deal also put a tremendous amount of emphasis, rather re-emphasis, on green energy supply chains. So, what is the perspective here? Is it that you want to secure supply chains in this direction, or to develop expertise in these supply chains?
Actually, it's both. It's both, because if you see during the recent visit of Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister and President Biden, they both committed towards building a US-India roadmap to build safe and secure global green energy supply chain, and that's not just an idea, but it's a plan. Let me put it this way. How do you do it? You do it through joint manufacturing of clean energy technologies and components. The initial phase to unlock about $1 billion of multilateral financing for projects across the clean energy value chain, and that includes renewable energy, storage, power grid technologies, zero emission vehicles. The US International Development Finance Corporation is actually working with several Indian companies, right? And that includes a $250 million loan to Tata Power Solar and a $500 million loan to First Solar. And this is for solar manufacturing facilities. There's a new agreement between the US Agency for International Development and the International Solar Alliance, which is led by India, to promote, sustainable power systems, which is leveraging diverse renewable sources. The DFC team was here in India, meeting with industry, and we were sort of participating in that. There's some very interesting things happening, because if you really look at it, there's a strong collaboration under something called the Strategic Clean Energy Partnership, right, which noted that a focus on energy security, clean energy innovation, climate change, employment generation. So you're actually focusing to in creating an environment which is going to provide both ends the kind of stuff that they're looking for.
Interesting, because in this raft of agreements they signed, there was one which says that United States and India will collaborate in taking this green energy partnership to third countries, and they specifically mentioned Africa. How do you see this? Because keep in mind that China is an established and dominant player in Africa in the business of green energy.
So I think the collaboration between US and India to enhance clean energy capacity in Africa, it's a strategic move. What you just said, yes, China is there, significant influence in that market. But I think this particular collaboration positions both India and the US as key players, where of course China is already there. What India and US are trying to do by focusing on solar and battery storage opportunities is target the high potential sector, that aligns with Africa's growing energy needs. You must remember, the next 1 billion people in this world are going to come from Africa. And therefore, the African economies will need that kind of support, right? And I think the goal is that you provide for the growing energy needs and support Africa's sustainability goals by giving African nations a competitive alternative to Chinese investments. Right? I think India has traditionally had strong relationship with Africa. If you look at the eastern seaboard of Africa, you look at countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa. There's a substantial Indian interest because of centuries-old trade relations, as well as a strong diaspora that plays a very important role in the industry and business there. So I think by partnering, US and India are providing that different option that probably African nations did not have until now. And it's a very clear targeted thing because, again, the involvement of DFC and the International Solar Alliance, again, highlights that collaborative approach because that kind of combines resources, expertise, and all of that enhances the credibility of the US and Indian effort in the region.
So finally, Rahul, that all that we have discussed, when you look at this relationship between the two countries, most people would think the most powerful country in the world will bring defense to the table because that's also very important for India. But what we see is that, yes, it's there, but there's a greater play for technology, for business, for economy, and people-to-people contacts. So it's an interesting pivot in the relationship between these two countries, right?
Indeed is, and it's still work in progress. Let me put it this way, right? We have traveled a huge distance from where we were, say, 25 years ago. There's a large degree of trust from a business point of view, from an economic, opportunities point of view, from a strategic point of view. If you look at where the world is today, and the interests that are coming together for US and India. So I think it's been a fantastic journey, but it's still a journey because there is so much more that can be done, and so much more that needs to be done from both sides. Because I think it's a kind of an inflection point, especially after this big thought on how do you play on the semiconductor game, how do you play on the technology end. I think it's a great inflection point where both countries, and like I said at the start, I think there's a bipartisan acceptance in both countries that the two nations are important for each other. They're both democracies, they understand, and massive people-to-people connect.
Indeed. This is a point of inflection in the relationship between India and the United States. To be sure, the United States today is far more open and trusting of India than it was, say, 2.5 decades ago. It is even willing to transfer technology related to critical semiconductors used in defense and telecom equipment. Similarly, India today, which is now the 5th largest economy in the world, has much more to offer at the negotiating table. This combination, especially India's decision to abandon its conventional zero-sum approach to negotiations, is opening up new vistas and new direction in this bilateral relationship. But a lot depends on India, especially its ability to walk its talk on the ease of doing business. Till such time India is able to pull it off, this relationship will remain a work in progress. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to StratNews Global on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And please, to share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us, I'm available on Twitter @Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.